Hey, Huntsman.
Yes, Cotton.
I'm thinking of going rogue.
What?
You know, all these rules and restrictions, they're just really getting me down, man.
That would make you an enemy of the guild.
So?
Do you not know what we do with enemies of the guild?
Give them a light fine and some community service hours?
Well, do you know how I got the name Huntsman?
Oh God, Mazios, no! Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, in this, a period of delayed Monster Hunter content, I find myself with a lot more time to ponder the future of the Monster Hunter series. Not just the main games, no, the idea of the Monster Hunter universe as a whole. We have interesting and unique spin-off games like Monster Hunter Stories as a very main example, which is an entirely different genre of game under the same universe with the same lore and same monsters, but what other uniquely irregular game types could we take into the Monster Hunter universe and have it not only work, but actually thrive? What proper spin-off games would have the potential to truly capture my full appreciation of the lesser explored parts of the Monster Hunter universe, and in fact explore them even better than an actual Monster Hunter game could? Well, to go down a specific route, I ask a simple question. What would happen if we got a Monster Hunter spin-off game based around the Hunters of the Guild tasked with taking out other hunters who have gone rogue and gone against the guild? We could even call it Hunter Hunter. So for those who are less aware, in the Hunters Guild there are a set of policies in their hunting in order to continue a balanced existence within the world. In other words, we don't exist just to hunt whatever we feel like just for fun whenever we want. We exist to hunt specific targets causing specific damage to a specific environment. There isn't just a guild-wide kill order on Rathalos. The Rathalos that we get quests for just happen to be particularly aggressive or happen to have laid their nest in a particularly dangerous place for humans. As a result, in order to ensure that we do not disrupt nature past what is necessary, creating a stable environment of harmony between hunters and monsters, the Hunters Guild exists, creating quests and providing strict guidelines for everyone who takes on the official role of hunter. Of course, any hunting by non-hunters, also known as poaching, is incredibly illegal. In fact, some who are trained as hunters even do not align themselves with this policy, either from the very beginning believing monsters to be, well, just that, monsters. Others leave the guild later on through differences of opinion. These hunters, if they become poachers or go against humanity in some way, being trained as hunters, become known as rogue hunters. They are dangerous to our very way of life, and as a result, the guild has a solution to them too, known officially as Guild Knights, though in my mind I will always call them Hunter Hunters. But that's the background you need to know to understand what I'm about to put forward here.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it!
Okay, so the idea being that the story is built around these humanoid bosses using augmented Monster Hunter weapons, with the whole game being built as an engine for the endgame, which is all sorts of player versus player. So Monster Hunter weapons that you love, the animations you love, the skill style that you love, the additive skills, but reimagined from the ground up as a PvP experience, with a Dark Souls-esque RPG storyline along the way, because I really think that combination would be perfect to dive into the deeper but less explored lore of the Monster Hunter universe. So starting off with exactly what I mentioned, I imagine the story experience itself to be something akin to a Souls-like game, fighting increasingly harder bosses throughout a story that brings you through a twisting, lore-filled world, and I think this could be the perfect time to explore a time period talked about in ancient legends of Monster Hunter at Castle Schrade, the location famously destroyed by Fatalis way back in the day, and honestly the amount of lore that we actually have on this time period and this location is so few and far between that it would leave the development team a ton of freedom to really create their own version of the Monster Hunter universe. Sort of like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic in the Star Wars universe. It's an entirely different sort of medieval type of times compared to the lore that we actually have, and it's just giving it a bunch of space to explore that.
Experience the power, the passion, and the pageantry of medieval times.
Yes, I think of this a bit closer to something like Project Awakening in that sense. I picture that kind of visual style attached to this game, and as for flow within a Monster Hunter setting, I think of the progression imagine of a game like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, where there were various planets, which in this case would be different Monster Hunter maps, like the Ancient Forest or Wildspire Wastes, and you slowly progress through the map in a sequential order, tracking your specific target while dealing with side enemies along the way, maybe even some small monsters or some guest appearances from beloved large monsters once in a while. But I really do want this game to feel less like you are someone experienced hunting monsters, and more that your speciality really is the rogue hunters. Your skill system, while similar to normal games, would have specific skills that fit hunting humans more than hunting monsters. And while the combat system would be somewhat similar to the action RPG style of world, I can imagine it feeling very different if balanced in a way to create a fair PvP endgame, almost more like a fighting game type of combo system, as something like Charge Blade out of the tin versus something like Heavy Bowgun would be hilarious if they were implemented exactly how they work in the main series games.
Isn't that just like brings a knife to a gunfight?
It just wouldn't make sense as a tactical fight in a 1v1 setting, which I imagine to be the main activity of the endgame, 1v1, so the combat itself would definitely be different from the ground up. That said, maybe some group game modes could be fun too, I don't know. That's a little bit past my domain of creativity, I suppose. I'd rather leave that to someone with a better concept of decent game design. The story though, that part I have a pretty solid picture of in my mind. So back to the general level design, you work your way through a sort of sequential trail on a Monster Hunter map, basically leading you through one zone at a time as you track your target along this winding path and get through any obstacles, only to be met with various super unique bosses at the end of each map. Not just like Rogue Longsword User 1 or something like that, but I picture something way more interesting, something along the lines of Monster Hunter Riders champions.
I am sickened, but curious.
These unique characters with things like a giant shield he uses by himself or the dual longswords. I could totally imagine a fantastic boss fight based around these with the same level of detail that a monster fight itself has, but in a more scripted scenario, sort of like Raging Brachydios as a quest. I think that's actually the perfect comparison in game for something like this. And you go through this potentially sprawling, potentially not so in depth, I don't know, preferably in depth of course, but at this point I might just be inventing a sort of fantasy of a perfect game that can never exist, but it is just a sequence of pre-scripted quests through the Monster Hunter maps. For example, another rogue hunter boss idea I have is an insect glaive user, but their insect, instead of being a kinsect, is actually a Celtis. So they fight alongside a relatively low tier large monster to create this super neat and unique fight with a creature we already know and at least some of us love. Maybe you even see but don't fight certain ancient monsters because of the times we're in, like the origin species from Frontier, like Vol'jang, the volcanic Rajang, or Gurieta Mosu, who I absolutely buried the pronunciation of, but the water mossy Gravios, who looks almost like he could be the ancestor of Baroth as well by some weird metric. Maybe these monsters are just roaming around in the background, or maybe there are parts of quests where you have to stealthily avoid them because they are super powerful and you are not trained for monsters so much as hunters. Hunter, not Monster Hunter.
What did he just say?
And as a result of all this, the PvP endgame would be based around making the player character out to still be a hero, the hunter of rogue hunters, and every player opponent you have is pretended to be a rogue hunter, sort of like Watch Dogs multiplayer intrusions in the single player that game has, where everyone is the good guy on their own screen and your opponent is always the hacker. It would fit perfectly in this sense. You are always a hunter and you can somehow mess with your opponent's visuals, maybe add a red bandana or something that makes them look like a rogue hunter, but just make it so that you are always the good guy, the opponent always looks like the bad guy, even though on their screen they think they're the good guy. It works, trust me. Anyways, to sum it all up, my idea for a neat Monster Hunter series spin-off game is, instead of a PvE focused action RPG based around a grind 'em out endgame for power increases and cool aesthetic pieces, to have a PvP focused action RPG that leans heavier toward one-on-one humanoid fighting as a focus, with a sprawling Dark Souls-esque storyline progressing through the ancient Monster Hunter times of Castle Shrade, leading through sequentially designed Monster Hunter maps hunting the rogue hunters of the guild, with an endgame based around player versus player combat. How does that sound? Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur and this has been my brand new idea. Do you like the sound of this game? What kind of unique and interesting Monster Hunter spin-offs do you wish existed? Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love. So let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Continent, Hollow, we're all here talking about the things you want to hear. So if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.